Hey guys, Samit here. So today I'm going to be showing you how to extend Strapi by building a custom plugin. Now for those of you who don't know what Strapi is a CMS solution that's written in JavaScript and that runs on Node. It's a very neat way to basically build APIs for your application, and the way Strapi differs from some of the other popular CMSs like WordPress is that Strapi does not build a front-end application for you by default. What it does though is it exposes some neat REST APIs against your data models and your collections to basically consume your content from your client side with whatever language or whatever application that you decide to deploy. So that could be a mobile app, it could be a website, it could be a blog written in whatever framework or language that you actually prefer. And that's what I find very, very interesting about Strapi. Now the documentation is quite simple to follow. If you just want to deploy a standard instance of Strapi and start using it out of the box, it basically requires almost zero configuration, and I'm going to show you that in a bit. But you start running into trouble when you start looking into customizing Strapi, especially when you want to do what we want to do today, which is to build a local plugin, a customized one. You'll find little information here about how to do the back end part and how to basically customize the front end part, and by front end what they're referring to here is the admin side front end, not the client side front end. And I just didn't find it very sufficient, so I had to do a lot of digging around, and that is the reason why I'm doing this video today, to share with you the conclusion and the methods that I've come across to achieve what we're trying to achieve. So let's just start working on installing Strapi on our machine, getting it running, and I'll show you how that's a breeze. It's a very simple process. So what Strapi does is it basically gives you this one-line script that basically sets up the entire project for you, folder structure, basic core code and whatnot, and it installs an SQLite instance for the database. Now Strapi supports different databases. You can use SQLite, you can use MongoDB, you can use MySQL. It's up to you based on the needs of your project. For this case, SQLite should be more than enough. We're not hosting anything too big, we're not doing anything too complicated with the database, so we're just going to leave it as it is. So what you want to do is copy and paste the script. I've created a folder called Strapi demo. Make sure you're using Node 10 or above. I'm using Node 12.18 on my machine, and we're going to name this Strapi demo. This is going to be the name of our project, and make sure that you have the quick start flag here. Hit enter and let it take care of business. It's very, very simple, guys, and this is one of the most beautiful things about Strapi, is that you can get from nothing to a fully functional CMS in no time. And I'm going to show you how this works. Now you can see it's creating a quick start project. It's setting up the files, and if you want to take a look at it, what we can do is we can go to our Strapi demo. You can see the command basically building your project, and I'm gonna touch upon these folders in a bit. So once the script is done, basically it exposes the admin interface through this port on our localhost, and what we can do is we can take a quick look at it by visiting localhost port 1337. So let's take a look at this, localhost 1337 admin, and you're gonna see that the command line is basically logging all the interactions. Let's go ahead and create a quick username. We'll call it demo. We're gonna give it a password and an email, and ready to start. And what this is going to do is going to continue and finish the setup for us. So you can see in absolutely no effort we have a working CMS right there, and it's a very neat interface. In here you see your collection types, basically your tables or your data, and here there are some pre-installed plugins, and these are called core plugins, and they come bundled with Strapi. They have different functions, things like roles and permissions, file upload and image optimization, and of course the most important is your content type builder. This is where you create your different content types, for example blog posts or articles, relations, users, whatever data you want to be interacting with through your CMS. And there are some other plugins, very neat ones like GraphQL support, and this is something that is very popular for people using Strapi. However, we're not going to be utilizing GraphQL, we're just going to be using normal REST APIs in our example today. So now what I want to do is close everything up and open up a new terminal window, CD into my project, and make sure that you're in the root. We're still not in the root because I created the project inside a folder called Strapi demo, so I'm gonna have to CD into it twice. Make sure that you're sitting right here at the root folder where all these folders are sitting, and then you want to run VS Code to load up your project from there. Now once we're there, we're not going to need this terminal anymore because we're going to be using the integrated terminal from inside VS Code. From there, what you can do is say npm run develop, and that's gonna run your server, your local development server again. Hold on a second. I think I'm using the wrong version of Node. Yeah, because my default Node version for the terminal is 8. I'm gonna switch this up to Node 12.18. Now we can see that, yeah, I'm using the right version of Node. Let's say npm run develop, and this should work with no problems. So once that finishes loading up, let's open up a browser window and go back to where we were. Localhost admin. So let's go back to the content types builder. So what I wanted to show you is how Strapi is going to be actually modifying the folder structure as we go. And that is one of the things that I find very nice about Strapi, is that you actually can see how it builds everything in real time and how it creates these files for you to be able to extend and to customize later on. So we were creating an article collection, and then in there we're going to create some fields. We said title, that's going to be short text, and we're going to make it a required field. We can add another one, and we're going to call that body with long text, and again we're going to make it a required field. Let's finish this up, save, and Strapi is going to restart itself because that's what it needs to do whenever you create a new model. And right there you can see that under API, an article folder was created with these default folders. One of them is the config folder, and we can take a look at it real quick. This has a roots JSON file, and what it does, it defines all the APIs that Strapi automatically generates for your model. You can see that we have a get endpoint to articles, which finds all the articles, a count, an ID to find just one article by ID, post to create one, update, put, delete. So you get all these methods exposed for you by default. You have your controllers, and basically you'll notice that these are empty because what Strapi does is it runs shadow functions in the background, so it doesn't actually put all the code that the controller has right here. However, you can copy and paste the core functions that the controllers offer and put them in here, and what it does is it's going to extend those shadow functions using the code that you place in your controllers or your models. Same thing to models. You'll find the model definition in here under this JSON file. This is exactly what we just did on the interface, but this is the JSON file that basically defines your model. You'll find that you have an article under collection type. It has these attributes. Basically, these are the fields: title and body, string type and text type, required true, exactly just like we defined it on the user interface. And then you have your services, which is something else that you can also extend. And by default, as I said, Strapi places all these empty files for you to be able to extend the core functions the way you want to. And that's something that you can explore further by going through the docs. So right now we have this endpoint, and what I want to show you is simply right now, according to this root, we have this API that sits under this articles root. So let's just test that real quick and go localhost articles, and that's a get request from the browser, and you'll find that it returns forbidden. The reason for this is because we have to define roles and permissions for this new collection. So go to roles and permissions, go to public to make this publicly accessible to everyone. And under article, which we just defined, you can basically select which actions you want to allow publicly or for authenticated users. So we're gonna open up find one to basically everyone, and you can define a rate limiting policy, and that's something I'm going to show you later on when we create our plugin. So for now, we're not going to perform any policies against this root. We're just going to save. And now if we go back to articles, you should find that it returns an empty JSON. That is because we have not created any content in there. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. Add a new article. We'll give it a title, new article. And this is the body. Let's save this. And very simply, if we go back to this API endpoint, you'll find that it returns a JSON object which contains this article. It's a very, very neat API, and the beautiful thing about it is even if you start creating relations between articles and, let's say, categories, you'll find that these relations are very easy to traverse through these JSON objects. I'm going to show you this as well. Let's create a new content type, and that's going to be again a collection. We're going to call it categories, or let's call it article categories. Okay, and so let's give it a singular name, category. And no need for any advanced settings. Continue. And we're going to give the category a name. And that is, of course, a required field. And let's just finish. Save this. And wait for Strapi to restart. Now, once that's done, let's go back to our article collection type and create this relation with the article category. So we're going to add another field, and that field is going to be of type relation. So basically in here you can see a visual representation of how the relationships work, and what we want to do is a many to many, because one article could have several categories, let's say, and one category could contain many articles. So we can go ahead and create and choose this one here where it says article has and belongs to many articles. So it could have more than one, sorry, not article, but category. So by choosing this article category here, you define that articles have and belong to many article categories, and this is going to also be vice versa. So no need to work on any advanced settings right now. We can just finish this up, save, and you'll see how this reflects both on the model definition in here. You'll find this added automatically, which is the relation, and you can see that this is defined with a via parameter, and the same thing is going to reflect to the article category model definition as well. So from the interface point of view, if you go to articles now and you create a new article, you'll find that you'll be able to select an article category. Let's go ahead and create some categories. We can say that, for example, this is lifestyle, and you can just link it to some articles directly. We're not going to do that from here. We're going to do it from the articles point of view. Let's just add a few entries in here. We can say lifestyle is one category. Another one is tech, for example. Oops, tech. And I'll add one more and we'll call it, for example, politics. I can't type. Politics. All right. So from articles here, this new article can be linked to these types by adding them in here. So we can say this article is a tech article and is also a lifestyle article somehow. We can add another one and we can say another article. This could be the title. Here is the body of the other article, and we can make this a political article, for example. Save it. And what I want to show you is how beautiful this REST API is. So now when we call this REST API again, you'll find that we get our two articles with ID 1 and ID 2. Here's a new article, here's another article, and you'll find that the categories are actually defined within the JSON response, which makes it very easy for you to handle from your front side application. You'll find that the articles are passed through the JSON object. So a new article belongs to tech and belongs to lifestyle, and again another article belongs to politics. And now we can open up even the API endpoint for the articles category by going again to roles and permissions, public, and allowing the client-side app to actually browse, for example, all the article categories. So we can open up the find endpoint, and now if we go to article categories, it'll return all these categories and the articles that belong to each one. So that's a many-to-many relationship, and it was a breeze. It took us practically no configuration to set up, so it's all taken care of by Strapi, and that's one of the most beautiful aspects of using the CMS. So you can already see how this is going to make your front-end development experience much easier. Now that we got a brief look into how content is basically set up and how Strapi handles the different content categories and collection types and whatnot, we can move on to our subject, which is how to extend Strapi by building our own custom plugin. And why I wanted to build a plugin in the first place was because I had this little contact form on my website, and since I was deploying Strapi as a backend and a CMS, what I wanted to do is just extend it to utilize its existing database to capture that input from the users on that contact form and basically just save it in a collection here called messages. I didn't just want to do this by creating a collection from here, which could have completely worked and is completely fine if that's all you need. You could just basically create a collection type, call it messages, expose the APIs with a create endpoint, and just start sending your requests through that endpoint from your client-side application. But if you create a plugin What you are also able to do is to build an interface for that plugin, and basically that's going to show up right here. And what that could allow you to do is to manage these messages from an interface just like this one. So basically we could build an interface that shows us all the recent messages, allow you to delete the messages that you've already read, or mark them read, or mark them as spam, or whatever you want to do. And that is the beauty of plugins, and this is why I chose to go in a different path by building a plugin from the ground up. So this next step, I'm going to show you how to generate a plugin and how to customize it. So back to our VS Code, let's close everything up and just clear our terminal, shut down the server by Control C. And now we want to generate a plugin. So instead of creating all the folder structure from the ground up, Strapi gives us a very nice script called generate. And the way that works, you can generate policies, you can generate plugins, you can generate APIs, whatever you need. And Strapi is just going to go ahead and build your folder structure for you, or for that specific plugin. So let's go npm run generate plugin. I'm sorry, I think it's run Strapi generate plugin, and we give it a name, contact form. So now you can see here Strapi says generated a new plugin contact form at plugins, and it created a folder called plugins for us with another folder inside of it called contact form, and that has the same structure as many other folders that we've seen inside the API, except for one additional folder called admin. And this is where you can basically create or define a React front end for your plugin to be able to manage it through the admin UI. So basically what goes inside admin source here is going to show up as a tab under plugins here, where you can basically expose the admin side of your plugin. So let's just put that aside for a bit, and from our plugin what we want to do is we want to, as we said, we want to define a new collection called messages, and that's where Strapi is going to be saving our incoming messages from our client-side application. So let's go to our plugins folder and create a new folder called model or models. Inside models we're going to create a oops, that's a file. Let's create a folder called models, and in there we're going to create a definition for a messages model, basically, which once we run Strapi it's just going to build up into a collection type right here. So let's just copy this definition, this model definition JSON file from one of our existing collections and paste it in here to save ourselves the effort of writing the file from the ground up. I'm going to rename this to what my model is called, which is message. And in here, let's customize the code a little bit. So this is a collection type, and the collection name, we're going to give it a name of messages. And under info name, again, message. Options, leave them as they are. Attributes, so we're going to have a name, which is, again, a name which is the contact or the person's name who's posting the message. And instead of articles, we're going to have let's just delete this and add one more entry for each of our fields. So we're going to add another field called message, and that's also of type string. And let's add one more field called email, and this is basically our customer's email, and that's going to be of type email. And these types basically reflect what kind of validation we're going to ask Strapi to do on our incoming requests. For message, we can give it type text instead of string because it's going to be a bigger body, maybe 500 characters or more. And let's just save that. And now if we run Strapi's development server again, you're going to see that it's going to detect this change and it's going to build up the model for us. So let's go npm run Strapi develop. Alright, so that's done. Let's refresh our browser, and just like we expected, we can see a collection type here, messages. You can see how this is already very easy, and the fields that we created, name, message, email, they're all sitting there. If you wanted to manually add some entries in there, you'll find this very nice UI where you can manually add data to your database, and you can already see the validation taking place. So this is an email. If we just write something like this, it's going to say this is not an email. This validation can also be extended to be applied to our incoming requests through the API. But right now, we still don't have the API for this messages. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the config folder and we're going to find routes.json. In this routes, basically we're defining the routes that we're going to expose for this plugin. And right now by default, Strapi created the get method for us for to the route path, which basically responds to get requests that go to contact form. So anything under your address / contact form is going to go to this route. And these are basically pointing, or the handler is pointing at the controller that's going to take care of the logic behind this route. So this goes to contact form, which is this file under controllers.index, and this is one of the exported methods from that contact form. If we look at it here, you'll find that there is an index endpoint that's being exported from this controller, and all it does is it responds with a OK message, an HTTP 200 response message with OK. So let's just test that real quick. But before we do that, you have to give permission to that route for publicly, and that's from roles and permission public. And again, you're going to find that your plugin now is one of the entries that you can find here. So here's our plugin, contact form, and whatever exposed routes that's already been created or the ones that you're going to create later on manually are going to be listed here. So let's just open up index publicly and save. So now if we go to localhost, instead of this, we go to our contact form and do a get request, we get this message, which is OK, the one defined here. Let's say OK again, save this. It's going to restart itself, rebuild everything in the background. And now if we revisit this, you're going to get this other response. So you see how easy this is. So we're going to define a new route in a bit with a post method, and we're going to accept some input that's going to be validated. It's going to be subject to policies that we choose, and then we're going to save that information to the database and respond to the client with a success message or a failure, depending on the logic that we're going to be writing. Now, one more thing I want to show you before we continue customizing our plugin is the admin UI that the plugin also exposes to this admin portal. Now, you might have noticed that our plugin is not showing up here just yet, and that is because we need to rebuild Strapi whenever we customize the admin UI or whenever we add a new plugin. So to do that, let's just quit the server, just Control C, and we're going to say npm run Strapi build. So that's going to take a while. Let's Strapi rebuild the admin UI, and it's going to say rebuilding admin UI with development configuration, because our current environment is a development environment. And once that's done, we're going to rerun the server, and you're going to find that the plugin is going to show up here. Although at this point, the UI is not going to contain anything useful, and that's something that you have to customize by writing your own React component that's basically going to control the view and let you interact with the plugin in whichever way you choose. So once the build has completed, let's go ahead and rerun our development server by npm run strapi develop. And then we're going to reload our admin UI, and we should be able to find our plugin listed in the menu on the left. So now that we've reloaded this, we can find that our contact form plugin is showing here under plugins, and we're getting this default UI or this default page. This is coming from the React component that's defined under plugins admin source, and basically inside the source is whatever UI components you want to strap to your admin UI side of the plugin. You'll find that the index .js at the very root basically bootstraps all these different parts of the application to allow you to access different methods and objects that Strapi exposes to your admin UI. In containers, you'll find a home page, index.js, and this is basically what you're seeing here. And you'll find that this says happy coding. It's using a plugin ID that it's getting from this file, and which defines your plugin name. And whatever you do here is going to reflect here. However, whenever you make changes, you want to reload the server, because this does not hot reload by itself. Whenever you make changes, then you're going to have to rebuild, just like we did a minute ago. So there is of course a flag that you can run next to your npm run script to hot reload this page or the admin and rebuild Strapi whenever you make changes to this UI part. So I'm not going to get into the details of this. Maybe if I do find interest in this topic, I might actually extend this video with another one that only talks about this part and how to customize this admin UI side of the plugin. For now, we're going to go back to our controller, to our backend part of our plugin, which is in the plugins folder under the plugin name folder and under controllers. And what I want to do is I want to define a new route, and this route is basically going to accept an HTTP post, and this HTTP post is going to contain a payload or data that I want to post and save in my database. Now I'm going to show you how to do this in a bit, but a very important note is we don't want to be interacting with the database directly. We want to benefit from all the methods and the layers and the middleware and the policies that Strapi basically offers to us. And to do this, there is an object called entity service that Strapi exposes to us, and by using that object, we're going to find several methods that we can benefit from, things like create, delete, update, find one and find all, count, and different methods, and they're all database related. So if we use the entity service to run our database interaction, we're going to benefit from all the different layers that Strapi already has built in, things like validation, things like model and entity checking and whatnot. So I'm going to show you this in a bit. Let's go ahead and define a route here, and we're going to call it post message, and it's going to be an async command which takes in a context object, and this context object comes from Koa, which is the HTTP server that Strapi runs on. So if we just do console.log and we log the CTX response object, and specifically the body, let's just go ahead and save this. Of course, after defining any route or after creating the route in here, we have to go to our config routes.json, and we have to also point Strapi towards it. So we're going to add an entry here. Oops. We're going to add an entry. Let's just copy and paste this. The method is going to be post. The path is going to be post message. You can define whatever path you want for your API. This is basically what comes after your address or your IP address, and then backslash the plugin's name, and then whatever route you want to add in here. So that's going to respond to this API, that's going to respond to these methods. So the path is post message. The handler is going to be whatever handler we are exporting from our controller file, and we called it post message. And we're going to configure it with no policies at the moment. I'm going to come back to this later and show you how to use some of the built-in policies from Strapi. So once that's done, let's hit save. The server is expected to reload whenever a change is made on these routes. As usual, whenever we define a new API route, we have to go to our roles and permissions, make sure that we enable that route from within this page. So go to post message, the new route that we just defined, and just check on it for public access, save it, and this should allow us to actually make calls to this API. Go back to your controller, and instead of just logging the response, let's also send a response back to the client saying, well, thanks for your message. Save this, wait for the server to restart. I'm going to use Postman to simulate my API calls. You can use whatever HTTP REST client you like. You can even write a small HTML and JavaScript page with a form. Whatever is convenient to you. I like using Postman. It's available on different OSs, so not just on Ubuntu. You can get it on Windows, on Mac. So here's the route that we just defined. And let me pass in a body with these parameters. So name, email, message. The email is just gonna pass in a test at test.com, and the basically the type is gonna be xwww form URL encoded, which is just URL encoded payloads. Let's just send that and see what we get back. So right now we're getting not found. This should be post message. Sorry about that mistake. So post message, and now we get a reply back from the server saying thanks for your message. So it's pretty clear right now that whatever we want to do in regards to our API requests that are coming through these endpoints that we're defining, we're going to have to write that logic in here. Now it's good practice to write any business logic that's related to your model in a separate file called services, and then call these services from within your controller. However, for this use case, because the logic is quite simple and we're not going to be writing any special model related logic, so I'm just going to do it all from within the controller file. I'm not going to have to worry about writing any custom services. We're just going to be using some of the built-in services that Strapi offers, and specifically the entity service, which is going to do amazing things such as data validation, checking our model, checking basically the data that's incoming against the definition of the model that we're trying to interact with. And it's just going to abstract our interactions to the database such that we don't have to worry what kind of database is sitting behind the entire application. It's just going to take care of that by exposing the different methods that I mentioned before, things like create, update, delete, find one, all of the same methods that any API that Strapi creates for you, it's automatically there and you can access it through the entity service. So to reference the entity service inside our controller, what we're going to do is, before sending any response back to the client, basically create a constant called result. And that's going to await, because the entity service is going to, or the methods in the entity service are going to return promises, and we don't want to carry on the execution of our code before the promises have resolved. So we're going to say await. We're going to call it by saying Strapi dot entity service, and we're going to call the create method. And this create method is going to take in two things. We want to pass in a data object and another object that basically defines the model that we're trying to write or create this data in. In our case, the model is this custom model that only belongs to this plugin, and the model we've created is called message. So the way to do this, to tell the entity service that the model we're targeting belongs to a plugin, is we have to pass in the model's UID. And simply saying the model UID is just this. It's basically you say plugins contact form, which is the name of our plugin, dot the name of the model that we're targeting, which is message. So that's pretty much it. And for data that we're passing, let's just capture the data that's coming from the request in a constant called data, and we're gonna get it from ctx.response.body. There's no need for us to console log this anymore. Let's just save this, and if all goes well, basically, so if we pass in the data and the model to the create method under the entity service, the code should carry on execution without any errors. If it does error out, Strapi is just going to capture that, and it's automatically going to send it's just going to catch the errors that this throws, and it's going to send a response back to our client saying what the error is, and if it's validation related, it's going to show which fields have a problem. I'm going to show you this in a bit. So now that we saved this, let's go ahead and send a post request to our API, and this is the post request that we created earlier. I've already been testing this code before, so there's going to be a few entries in the database. However, let's create a new one. We're going to call this Ali and keep everything else the same. Let's send this post request, and you'll find that we get some errors. So the reason is, did a mistake here. This should be a request, not response. Obviously there is no response yet, so the body is coming from the client request. Now if we send this again with the same fields, we get thank you for your message. And the nice thing is, if we go back to the back end, go to messages, you'll find the record right here, Ali, with the message and the email that we just input through our REST client. So here's another nice thing. Validation, you get it by default. So if I pass in, or if I request this without a name field and send, here's what I'm gonna get. Error 400, HTTP 400 with a bad request. Why? Because the name must be defined, and that is because the entity service is referencing my model definition, and that field dictates that this field has to be supplied. Now, if it is supplied, unfortunately, and with an empty value, Strapi is gonna accept it. So what I like to do here is I like to always validate my request data for being not empty. So what I'm going to do is if not data dot name or not data dot email or not data dot message, I want to kill this right away, and I want it to throw an error. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say ctx dot bad request. That's a method from the context object that we're working with here. We're going to say bad request, all parameters must be supplied, and I'm going to return this. Save, and let's try this again. Once the server is ready, let's send this again, and you'll find that we're getting this error back, and nothing is being saved to the database because basically the execution stopped right here because this parameter is missing. So once we put it again, so here, Sam, send, boom, we got it. It's right there. A better thing to do is basically to just return the created object. So what I'm going to do, instead of sending through the context object, I'm going to return the result to the client. And Koa is just going to take care of that. Koa is basically the HTTP server that Strapi is running on. So by returning this object, it's just going to send it back to the client. Let's try again. Send this. And now I get the created record with the ID, with the email that I just input, created at, updated at. These are some standard fields that I defined my model to basically write whenever we create a new record. So that was very simple, very easy to do. Now we have a functioning plugin with a functional API endpoint through which we can post, and Strapi takes care of handling the database and the data for us. So we've seen that validation is working out of the box according to our model definitions. So what if we wanted to further protect this route by basically creating a rate limit? Because right now, if we just get a malicious user and we just keep sending these posts, they can keep doing this indefinitely. And that could definitely crash our database. That could put a lot of load on our backend, on our server. It could end up being a disaster. So one way to do this is to rate limit this API. And there is a policy, there are some built-in policies in Strapi that you can use and you can benefit from. And it's as simple as adding this in your API configuration. So in this policy here, for this post route, we're gonna reference a policy that comes as part of one of the core plugins that Strapi bundles. And that core plugin is called the user's permission plugin, which is the one that's offering us this functionality that we're using from right here, which allows us to open up or close different API routes based on roles or permissions or usernames or whatever it is. So in that plugin, there's a policy called rate limit. And the way to reference this is to go plugins, users, permissions, and call or reference rate limits. Let's save that, wait for this to restart, and let's try to bombard our backend with consecutive requests. So you'll find that I'm sending one after the other. Eventually, server is going to be like, nope, I'm sorry, you've made so many requests, I'm going to have to stop you. There you go. Now the definition of this policy is something that you can customize. I'm going to leave this up to you guys to look up through the documentation. You can customize that and basically how frequently the rate limit is going to come and put a stop on a client's request. But this is just a small demo on how you can utilize built-in policies from Strapi to basically interact and to further enhance your plugins and your routes. So there you have it, guys. That was a simple demo to show you everything from installing Strapi to customizing your own plugin and writing your own routes, your own data model that sits inside a plugin, how to utilize Strapi's built-in HTTP methods, and how to utilize Strapi's services to interact with your database. And basically from here, the sky's the limit. You can go ahead and start exploring Strapi further. If there's any specific topic that interests you in Strapi and you would like me to expand upon, please do let me know in the comments. I am very, very interested in exploring Strapi. I'm digging deeper and deeper every day, and the more I find out about it, the more I'm going to try to share with everyone. Please do let me know if anything specifically interests you, and I'll try my best to put up another video to expand on that topic. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.